Hello and welcome to Datacasts. So it's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but I wrote an R script recently that I thought was kind of cool to show as an example, so I thought I would just run through that with you today. The basic idea here is that I read a web page and I extract information from that web page from which I create a dataset. Pretty basic idea, but quite a powerful concept. And the core of this, the package that I rely on the most to achieve this, is the rvest package, which you can see up here on the screen. And rvest comes from the tidyverse as part of the tidyverse ecosystem of packages. The actual web page that I'm reading, I like movies, and this The Guardian's website is pretty good for listing all of their different film reviews. They just put them all up for free. Which is pretty cool, and I thought maybe it could be quite interesting to create a data set that just has all of these different film reviews. So it has the name of the film, and the content of the review, and the number of stars that they give it. They have this star rating system, and they give up to 5 stars for each film. The name of the author, because there are different authors. I just thought that would be quite fun to do that. So you can see up here that I've got this review up, which is for The Three Musketeers, D'Artagnan. And this is actually a single paragraph review, so it's just a short review with just the one paragraph. Whereas this review for Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, this is a multi-paragraph review, so it's got 3 paragraphs, and the star rating is within the image here, so it's a slightly different placement. And having looked through a bunch of these different reviews, these seem to be the 2 different styles on the HTML pages. Either where the star rating is beneath the title but above the image, or where the star rating is a part of the image itself. And as I said, the reviews themselves might be really short. They might just be 1 paragraph, or they could be multi-paragraphs. So we have 2 slightly different versions of these reviews, and we'll see if we can extract what we need from either of them. So I'm going to head over to Posit Cloud. You can see I was doing some work earlier, so I'm just going to clear my console there. And then I'm going to create a new R script file. And obviously the first thing I'm going to need to do is load up the rvest library. I've already installed it, so I'm not going to bother installing it. I'm also going to load up the dplyr package as well, because I tend to use that in most of my work. And it's just really cool for just basic data wrangling, also part of the tidyverse. Another package I'm probably going to need is the string R package, because I'm going to be working with strings here. I'm going to be manipulating strings. So if you look at the title of this review, I can see that the title of the film is a part of the title of the review. The Three Musketeers D'Artagnan, Evergreen shines as Milady in flamboyant French adaptation. So I know that I'm going to need to extract that title from the broader piece of text. Okay, so I've got just these 3 packages. I'm just going to run that script just to load them up. And let's go back to the rvest help page. And how do we get started? So if you look at usage, so it loads up the package as we just did. And then it says start by reading a HTML page with read_HTML. And then you pass the URL to the HTML page to that function. So that's pretty straightforward. So let's do that. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object called URL that will just hold the URL that we were interested in, just because these URLs can be quite lengthy sometimes. So I'll just add that to that object. Then I will create another object which I'll call HTML_content. And to that I will save read_HTML, and then I'll pass that URL object. And then I'm just going to save this file, and I'm going to call it film, maybe datacasts film review data. I'm just going to restart R because I can see I got some things here in my environment from work I was doing earlier. So I'm just going to restart R just to make sure that everything is refreshed and cleared. And by the way, if your environment doesn't clear when you refresh R, you can just go to Tools, Global Options, and then here where it says Workspace, you'll just want to untick this tick box here, and then this drop down should be Never. That just means that when you restart R, that you kind of start from scratch, which is what you want, because you don't want to keep any objects in your environment that might mislead you as you continue to write your code. Okay, cool. Now let's run the page. And now I've got this HTML content. So if I just have a little peek at that object, so I can see there's some HTML that's stored in there, which is great. Now I need to actually work with that to get the information that I need. So if I go back to rvest, so they read the HTML, and then they start calling these other functions such as HTML elements and HTML text and so on. Okay, so let's try and let's look at this film review page. Let's say that I want the name of the author from this film review. If you're using any modern browser like Chrome or Firefox or Edge and so on, you can usually use the inspect functionality. So if you right click on something, you should have something like inspect, or maybe it's called something slightly different on the other browsers. But if you just click on that, then you can sort of inspect the underlying HTML. And as you can see, as I hover over them in this inspect pane, you can see them flick up on the screen. This particular one here with the name of the author, that is within an anchor tag. And that anchor tag falls under this address tag. So I think that's what I'm going to target. I'm going to look for address and then anchor, because from that I can get the name of the author. And this is basically what we need to do in order to sort of use rvest, is we need to inspect the HTML page and then find whatever it is that we need and sort of find a way to navigate down to whatever it is that we need. So there's a bit of detective work that we need to do. So, but I think using address and then a is going to give us the name of the author in this case. So let's give that a go. So let's switch back to Posit Cloud and let's create a new object called author. And by the way, I'm doing Alt and the minus symbol to get this assignment operator. That's just a cool shortcut that I discovered recently and is really helpful. So author, and we're going to pass our HTML underscore content object, and then we're going to pipe that. And I'm using the native R pipe here. If you want to enable that, if you go to Tools, Global Options again, and then Code, there is this tick box here, Use Native Pipe Operator. It just means that you don't need to use Magritte in order to get the pipe. You can just use the one that is embedded as part of R now, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to pipe that into HTML underscore element. In this case, we're only trying to target a single element, which is that anchor tag. And if you recall from earlier, we need the address tag and then the anchor tag. So you're sort of passing them in this sort of sequential order. First of all, look for the address tag, and then within that, look for the anchor tag. If I just run that little bit of code there, and then you can see down here in the console, it's returned a HTML node, and this is the anchor tag. And that will contain the name of the author, and I can actually just extract that. So if I pass another pipe, and then I can pass HTML underscore text, and that will actually grab the text within the anchor tag. So if I run those 3 lines, and down in the console you can see here is the author's name, Wendy Ide, which is great. Okay, just going to save that. Let's switch back over to the review again. So I've got the author's name. Let's say that now I want the title of the review. So not the title of the film, but this entire paragraph here, which is the title of the review itself. So how do I grab that? I'm going to right click on that and click inspect. And then in my inspect pane here, that will switch over to what it is I'd highlighted here, which is this H1 class. So I know I want the H1 because within that H1, if I expand that, you can see here's the text that I want. But I need to navigate down to that H1. I can't assume that that is the only H1 tag on the entire page. So I specifically want that particular H1. So if I kind of scroll up a little bit, I need perhaps a div that is unique to this area. So if I hover over this div here, we can see that has a particular name, data GU name equals headline. I'm going to guess that is a unique div, that there's only one headline div on this page. and I can see that it has a class of DCR-1DJ-OVMT. I'm going to take a wild guess here, and I'm going to guess that that class is always used for headline divs. And to verify that, I'm going to switch over to the other review of Dungeons and Dragons that we're looking at. Again, I'm going to right click on the review title and click inspect. So we've got the H1 again, and if we come up towards the headline div and the class DCR-1DJ-OVMT, that is actually the same as in the other review. So I can target this particular div with this class, and then from there I can navigate to the H1, and then that will get me the name of the review, the title of the review itself. So let's go with that. Back in Parsing Cloud, let's say review_title as my new object. And again, I'm going to pass HTML content, and I'm going to pipe that into, so HTML element, single element, not the plural, because there's just one H1 tag that we are targeting here. So we're going to want the div with a class, so we add a period for a class, whereas this hash symbol is for ID, but it's class that we want. So div dot, and then DCR hyphen 1DJ OVMT. I think that was the one. And then the H1. So let's just check that that works. I'm just going to run that little bit of code there. And yeah, that's returning the H1 that we wanted. And just as with the name of the author, we can extract the text by passing HTML_text. So if I run all 3 lines, there you go. There is the title of the review. Fantastic. All right. So what next? Well, what about the name of the film? We've got the name, sort of the title of the review, but what about the title of the film? Again, if we come back to this, well, the title of the film is actually a part of the title of the review. It's at the beginning, and it seems to be separated by a hyphen before we get this sort of few words summarizing the review itself. And if we switch back to the Three Musketeers, we've got the same thing here. We've got this hyphen. But with Dungeons and Dragons, they have the name of the film and then the word review and then the hyphen. So that's a little bit different. But generally, the hyphen seems to separate these 2 different components. The name of the film, which sometimes has the word review after it, and then sort of everything else. So this is where the string R package is going to help us. Now, I've already got that review title. So if I just run the whole script again and just look at review title, so you see down here in the console, this is what we need to work with. So let's create another object which I'll call film_title. And this time around, we're going to use the word function from string R. This allows us to separate some text into multiple different words. And we can actually tell this word function what separates our words. They don't have to be actual words. They can be just some kind of combinations of strings that are separated by something. So we're going to pass our review_title as the thing that we are working on here. And we want to get the first word, because again, if we remember, if we sort of think of this as being 2 words that are separated by a hyphen, then we want the first word, what comes before the hyphen, right? And because it's the hyphen that we want to target here, we're going to say sep for separator equals, there's a fixed thing that we're passing. And I'm actually gonna highlight this hyphen and the spaces around it and copy that. I want to make sure that it's this style of hyphen that I'm passing as my separator, and I'm going to paste that in here. There you go. Let's just check that works. So I'm just going to run this, and down in the console you can see here's the name of the film, The Three Musketeers d'Artagnan. Awesome. But what if I pass in the Dungeons and Dragons film review instead? So if I pass that as the URL, oops, I didn't actually copy it. I'm just going to copy and then paste in that URL instead. Okay, now if I run this entire script and I have a look at my film title object, yeah, so you see down here in the console, we do have the name of the film, but we also have this sort of surplus word review, which we don't want. We want to get rid of that. That's pretty easy. So let's just come back to what we did here. We're going to pipe that into another function from string_r, which is called str_remove. And we're going to pass space review. And now if I run this and then come down to the console, you can see now we've just got the name of the film and space review has been removed, which is great. All right, let's just make sure that is saved. So I've got the author's name, I've got the title of the review, and I've got the title of the film. Now let's come back and have a look at this page again. What I want now is the star rating and this sort of summary of the film review itself, like a subheading, I suppose. How do I get those? Well, let's right click on that and click inspect again to look at the two. And so as I just hover over these different elements, I'm trying to find what I might want to target first of all. I think probably this div here. So this one has data gu name equals stand first. So just as earlier we looked at the, I think it was headline div, I suspect that this is probably a good one to target. And again, I'm going to assume that the class is unique to this stand first type of div. So I think I can probably target that class. And within this div, there are two other divs. There's this one here. And if we look at the page, that div actually contains the star rating. And then this other div down here, and that one actually contains the subheading for the film review. So I actually want both of these things. So I think what I might do first of all is create an object that holds both of those divs within the stand first div. And then I can extract the star rating and then separately extract the subheading. So let's do that. Let's switch back to posit and let's create an object called stand first. And we'll assign that to, again, we'll pull in HTML content and we'll pipe that into HTML underscore elements. So notice the plural this time because we're pulling in multiple elements. We're not targeting one thing, we want multiple things. And what are we looking for here? We're looking for a div and the class was DCR hyphen and it was 1YI 1CNJ. Let's just run that just to check that that actually worked. Yeah, we can see down here in the console that is returning the stand first div and everything within that, which is great. So we've got that stand first object. That's kind of our starting point. Let's grab the review summary first of all. So let's call it review underscore summary. And here we're going to reference the stand first object that we just created. And we are going to pipe that into, well, what do we need? Again, let's go back and have a look at this. So we've got, I'm on the wrong review. Look at the D'Artagnan one. Stand first, and then the summary is the second div. But if I expand that div, so there's a paragraph in there, a p tag. Whereas for the star rating, that has a div, and then another div, and then other divs that contains each of the stars. So I think we want to target that p, that paragraph tag. So stand first, HTML underscore element this time because it's just the one element that we're targeting, and that is the paragraph. And again, if I just run that, it says object stand first because I haven't actually run that code. Let's just run that code. Now I've got the stand first object. Now I can rerun this, and now down in the console here is the content that I want, and we already know how to grab the actual text. We can just pipe that into HTML underscore text. And if I run the whole thing and then have a look at the review summary object, and down here in the console, here is just the text. So there we go, we've got the review summary. And now I need to grab the stars, and I think this is going to be a little more complicated. So let's again have a look at the D'Artagnan review. the Three Musketeers D'Artagnan. And if I hover over to get the stars div, so that is, I'm just going to right click and click on inspect to go right to it. Okay, so we started with a stand first, and then we come down, and eventually we have this SVG, which is a sort of like an image type. And then within the SVG, we have path. So there's an SVG, I think, yeah, so there's an SVG for each of the stars. In this case, 4 of them are filled in, but the 5th is not. So if I look at the final one, that's also an SVG, and that also has path. And we can see that the stars that are filled in have path with an attribute of fill, whereas in this case, the path doesn't have a fill because it's not actually filled in. So maybe what I ought to do is to target the SVG paths that have a fill attribute, because that will help me to count the number of stars that were given to the film. Whereas the stars with the SVG with a path that doesn't have the fill attribute, then those are not filled in. So I think that's probably the strategy here, is we target SVG path with a fill attribute. That will allow us to count the stars. So let's try putting this into practice. I'm going to head back to Posit Cloud. And first of all, I'm going to create an object called stars. And I'm going to call my stand first object again. And I'm going to pipe this into HTML_elements because there could be multiple stars. So we'll call elements. And we're going to target SVG path. And if I just run this a sec, and down in here in the console, it says HTML notes at 0. That makes sense, I think. And remember, we're looking for the attribute of fill for SVG path. So I'm going to call HTML attribute, and I'm looking for fill. So let's just try running that. And then if I come down in the console, I'm actually getting nothing. I think I know why. If you remember, we switched over the URL here to Dungeons and Dragons. And I specifically chose this because the position of the stars is actually different from the Three Musketeers review. In the Three Musketeers review, we can see that the stars are here between the title of the review and the summary. Whereas on the Dungeons and Dragons review, the stars are actually beneath the title, but sort of overlaid over the main image. We'll come back to that one. I think for the time being, we'll just take the URL for the Three Musketeers, and we'll put that back in as our URL just to make sure that this works. So I'll just rerun the whole thing again, and then we'll have a look at this stars object that we created. And then down here in the console, we can see, yes, we are getting things. We've got the fill element, so the fill attribute, sorry. There's actually 5 of them. There's transparent as well. So if I switch back to the Three Musketeers, and I look at this final star, yeah, and we can see that I did miss this the first time around, but we can see that for that 5th star, there is actually a fill attribute there, which is equal to transparent. So just targeting the fill attribute doesn't give us the number of stars, but what we can do is filter down to the fill of hash 121212, which is the sort of the blackish color that they assign to the filled in stars. And by targeting that, we can get the number of stars. So that's all good. We're still on the right track, at least for this review. It's going to be a little more complicated for the other review. Okay, so let's switch back to Posit Cloud. Now, how do I target the star ratings for the Dungeons and Dragons review? Well, we know that if we try to run this code on the Dungeons and Dragons style reviews, that it's not going to return anything. So let's just pass an if. And let's say if length of the stars object is equals to 0. So equals here because this is a comparison. If it's equal to 0, so basically if nothing is returned, Then we need to take a slightly different route. So we'll create the stars object again. We'll pass HTML content. So we're not starting from stand first here because the stars are not contained within the stand first. The stand first is this area here. They're actually above that. So we need to go up a little. So we're going to say start from the HTML content. And then we're going to pass HTML elements because we want to grab those stars. But what exactly do we need to look for here? So let's go back to that page, and I'm just going to right click on these and click inspect. So here are the stars, here's the div that contains them, and then if we keep going up and keep going up, and eventually we get this figure section, this figure tag, that might be something that we can use. There is a picture tag as well, but I suspect that's not the only picture tag because there is the picture of the author there. So I'm going to assume that figure is the only, there's only one figure tag on this page, or at the very least only one figure tag that has the SVG with path within it. So I think I might target figure, and then maybe I'll also go for the div as well. So perhaps I'll target this div, which sort of contains those stars of that class, then the SVG, then path. This might not be entirely foolproof, but we'll sort of try this, at least for this review, and just see if that succeeds. So figure, div class of this type, of this value, and then the SVGs, and then the path. Okay, let's go back to Parsing Cloud. So elements, the first thing I'm going to pass is figure, and then a div, and the class will be DCR-15 ZEXOM, and then SVG, and then path. Let's paste in the URL to this page into URL again, and then we can just test out this and see if we're on the right track here. So I'll run everything up to there. So stars should be basically blank. So in the console we can see, yeah, character 0, which means that our conditional here will trigger. So now if we run this piece here, and then down in the console we can see, yeah, that is returning these path tags that contain the stars. So we're on the right track. That means we can now pipe that into a HTML attribute, and we're looking for the fill. So again, if I just run this, and then down here in the console we can see we're back to where we were with the Three Musketeers review. We have the values from that fill attribute within path. Great. So now to complete this, whether we're using the stars object from here or the stars object from here, we're getting the same thing, which means that we can now grab the number of stars. So I'll call this stars_num, and I'll assign that to, we will use length, because we're going to count the number of things that are returned. And we'll pass the stars object, and then we'll just do just some basic subsetting here from BSR with stars equals, and it's going to be hash 121212. So again, if we come down here in the console, we're taking this character vector, but we only want to return the pieces from this that have this hash 121212, and then we're going to count how many things were returned, because that gives us how many stars were filled in for the film. You can see that our studio here is actually providing a background color here that matches this particular hex value, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's just run the entire script. And now if I look at this stars num object, and down in the console it says 4. This was for the Dungeons and Dragons review, so if I come back and then look at the review, you can see, yeah, that was actually a 4-star review, which is great. Okay, we're nearly there. I think we've got some of the most complicated parts here, but I still want to actually get the sort of the content, the review body itself, so the text of the review. So how do I do this? Well, let's create a new object called review_body, And again, we will pass HTML content, and we will pipe that into HTML. I'm going to do elements because I know that the review is going to consist of multiple paragraphs, or could consist of multiple paragraphs. So let's just take a look at that Dungeons and Dragons review again, and I'm going to target this section here. So I'm going to highlight the main body of the review and inspect. And then as I navigate through this page, we can see that, yep, there is a paragraph tag that contains the first paragraph. And then if we go up, we have a div class and then another div above of main content. This might be what we want here. This div ID of main content, that's probably unique to something that holds the sort of the main body of the text within which we have these paragraphs. So let's try targeting that. So back in Parsing Cloud, we're going to say HTML elements, and we are going to target div, and this time around it's an ID, not a class. So main content, and then within that the paragraph. So if I just run that bit of code, and then down here in the console we can see, yeah, sure enough, it's returning the paragraphs of the text, the 3 paragraphs, which is great. So then from that, I want to extract the text. So I'm going to pipe that into HTML_text. And if I run that and then come down here, now you can see that it's returned each of the paragraphs as it's a vector with 3 different pieces to that vector. That's quite useful. But I do want to kind of bring this together, concatenate this into kind of one continuous line of text, separated by maybe 2 new lines. And you might know that to insert a new line, it's \n for new line. 2 new lines would be \n. So the way we achieve this is we take what we have here and we pipe that into a paste function, which will concatenate things. And we're going to say collapse. And we're going to say what is going to sort of separate the different elements that we're collapsing together, and it's \n for the 2 new lines. So if I just run that little bit of code there, and then we take a look at review body down here, we can see that we have the review, and then we've got these \n, and again sort of around here, which separates the different paragraphs. So that's great. We've got the body of the review on these different paragraphs. So now we sort of have everything that we need to create the data set, more or less. So I'm going to create an object called data. I'm going to create a tibble, which we call from the dplyr package. And what I'm going to do is create the different columns. So film_title is going to be equal to film_title. And we also have the title of the review. So the review title will be equal to review title. And we have the author that we grabbed at the start. So that will be equal to author. The URL, I think it'd be handy to have the URL of the review. So review_URL will be equal to URL. And then the star rating, down on the new line here, so the star_rating, and that is equal to stars_num. So stars_num. And that is the number of stars awarded to the film by the reviewer. The summary of the review, so review_summary will be equal to review_summary. And then the main body of the review, that will be review_body that we just got, which is review_body. I am just going to save that, and I'm going to just restart R just to make sure that there was nothing I saved before that's been reused that perhaps wasn't quite right. So I'm starting from scratch, and I'm going to run the entire script. No errors in the console, which is a good sign. I've got my data object, so let's just click on that to take a look at the data object in the viewer. And here it is. It's just 1 row so far, but here's the film title, and that looks good. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. The title of the review: Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, riotously enjoyable fantasy adventure. The name of the author, the URL, the number of stars, which is 4. the review summary. So if I hover over this, more than just a reboot, this new chapter in the role-playing game, blah, blah, blah. And then the review body. Now if I hover over this, you can see in the pop-up that we get different paragraphs, which match to the paragraphs in the original review, which is great. This is looking really good, but there's one piece that's missing here. I think it might be useful to know the date of the review, when the review was actually posted to the site. That seems like useful information. And you know what? I think the easiest way to get this might be to get it from the URL. If I go back to the page itself, I can see that there is a date that is underneath the author's name, but the URL has the date as well. 2023 April. It's all right here, the different components separated by forward slashes. I think that might be the easiest way to grab the date, is just grab it from the URL. So let's go back to Parsing Cloud. I'm going to close that viewer, and I'm going to create a new object called data with date this time around, and I'm going to pass data, and I'm going to call it mutate because I'm going to insert some new columns. And the first thing I'm going to do is get the review. Get the year, sorry, from the review date. I'm going to follow a similar pattern through getting the year, getting the month, getting the day. So the year will be equal to, I'm going to call the word function again from string R. I'm going to pass in the URL because that's what I'm going to extract a word from. And which word do I want? Well, I know that my words are separated by forward slashes. So if I scroll up and look at the URL here, now at the start, I actually have 2 forward slashes, and then I've got one here, and then one here, and then this. So you might say that the HTTPS colon is word number 1, and then maybe this blank is word number 2, and then this would be 3, and then this would be 4. So I think that the year is probably word number 5. It can be a bit confusing because it's like you've got text here and then text here. But because we have 2 forward slashes at the start, we sort of have to do an extra count there. So I'm going to assume that 2023 is 5, the month is 6, and the day will be 7. So let's try that. Let's say word URL, get the 5th word, and the words are separated by a fixed value of forward slash. Let's just try that. Let's just run this. So I'm just going to run that section there. And then down here in the console, if we come right over to the end, we've got year and 2023. So that looks correct. Great. So I'm just gonna copy that, and I'm gonna paste it in twice with the commas at the end. But instead of year, that is going to be month, and that is going to be the 6th word, and then that is going to be day, and that is going to be the 7th word. So I've got the year, I've got the month, I've got the day, and from this I can form a date. So I'm going to say date is equal to, I could use the LubraDate package here, but rather than introduce another package into the mix, to keep things simple, I'm just going to call as.date from base R. And I'm going to need to concatenate the different components of the date. So I'm going to need paste 0. And then I'm going to add the year, the month, and the day. And then, because I'm not using LubraDate, as.date is a little more unforgiving about the formats that I pass to it. It's not clever enough to know that this is a date. I actually need to give it the format. So I know this from memory that the symbol for the year with the 4 numbers is capital Y. And then here we have an abbreviated form of the month, so APR for April. So that's going to be a lowercase b. And then the date is going to be D. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to deselect the components of the dates because I don't need them anymore. Once I have the date itself, then I can do -c, so pass a vector of things that we are going to remove. So that would be year and month and day. We won't need them anymore. Okay, I'm going to save that. And again, I'm just going to restart R just to make sure that everything is starting afresh. And I can run the entire script and see what we get at the end. So if I come in the console, I don't have any error messages, so that's a good sign. And then I'm going to have a look at data with date. So I'm going to just click on that object. I have everything that I had before, and if I scroll over to the right, I've also got a date, the 1st of April 2023. And if I have a look at the review, I can see, yeah, it was posted on the 1st of April 2023, so that's great. For one final check, what I'm going to do is take the Three Musketeers review URL, and I'm going to post that in here as my URL, and then rerun the entire script, and then have a look at the data with date object this time. And now we can see the Three Musketeers D'Artagnan, and we've got the review title. In this case, it's the same author. The URL, 4 stars. Does it have 4 stars? Yes, it does have 4 stars. And the review summary, the review body, which is just a single paragraph. I can see I did bring in that In Cinemas Now paragraph at the bottom. That's a little annoying, but we won't worry too much about that. And then the date, which is the 23rd of April. Is that correct? Yeah, the 23rd of April. So there you go. That is how you can read a web page, one that was sort of moderately complicated to get what we needed from it there. We read a web page that contains a film review, and we extracted the name of the author, the title of the review, the title of the film, which we got out of the title of the review, a little summary of the review at the top. We figured out how many stars were awarded to the film, irrespective of where the stars were located on the page, either within the stand first or above the main image. We then got the main body of the review, and from that we created a data set, and then we added to that data set the date that the review was published. And all of that in about 60 lines of code, which is pretty cool. So I hope you found this process useful and interesting. RVest is a pretty cool package, and what I really like about it is that if you find something of interest online, something that interests you, and you're thinking, you know, that might actually make a cool data set that I could play around with or share with others, then as you can see from the code that I've written, it doesn't take too much effort to go about doing that. So have a go yourselves, and yeah, good luck everybody, and thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.